Welcome to Movie Film, I'm Carl, and today we're trying something a little bit different here on Movie Film. Before you on screen, you see a tier list. And yes, we're jumping into the world of tier lists. Now, might be a day late and $1 short, but this is new to Movie Film, so let's give it a go. Today we're taking a look at Disney and Pixar movies and trying to figure out where to put each one. So the categories today, at the bottom, we've got complete trash. Then we've got okay, then we've got good, then we've got great, and then we've got greatest. And if you've seen our countdown of the 100 greatest movies, you might not be surprised to see what goes in that top folder. Now, one thing about this list is I didn't make this list. This is a pre-made list on Tier Maker. If you want to try it out for yourself, there will be a link in the description below. So one thing I noticed about this list is there's no Soul. So whoever made this list must have made it before Soul came out, but it does have everything up to Soul, including onwards. But before we even kick off, if Soul was on this list, it would be in top tier, greatest. And if you want to know why, check out the review of Soul on our channel. So let's jump in, starting out with the one that started it all, Toy Story. The Toy Story for me is a movie I watched as a kid, and I instantly fell in love with, and was also horrified by. The thought of your own toys upstairs coming to life when you're not there, and then the whole Sid's room thing. But Toy Story, it's a movie with a phenomenal story and some very good animation for the time. It blew everything else out of the water at the time. Now, okay, the animation hasn't held up over the years. Well, it has held up, but it's not as good as the more recent stuff. Especially when you see like Sid's dog and everything. Great storyline, great animation, great characters which have stood the test of time. And Toy Story simply can't go anywhere except for the greatest. And I don't think there's too many people that will disagree with that. Moving swiftly on, we've got Brave, and Brave is one of those movies I always forget about. Perhaps the most forgettable of all the Disney Pixar movies, but that does not mean it's not a phenomenal movie. Arguably one of the best stories, some of the best animation, one of the most unique settings, just overall a really good movie. Is it good? Is it great? For me personally, despite always forgetting that it exists, I still think it's a great movie. And it's going into great. Moving swiftly on, Inside Out, and as I mentioned earlier, if you watch the 100 greatest movie countdown on Movie Film, you'd fully expect this movie to be in greatest, as it is in the 100 greatest ever movies countdown list here on Movie Film. However, I'm going to be strict with the greatest and only put the most absolute best of the best in there. Toy Story's up there. Inside Out was a phenomenal story. It's the most borderline of borderline greatness, but I'm going to be strict and put it in great. So moving swiftly on, The Good Dinosaur. And when The Good Dinosaur came out, I saw the promos. I even saw some reviews on stuff like Total Film on BBC, and I wasn't that impressed with it. I wasn't that hyped for it. I wasn't looking forward to it that much, and it's a Disney and Pixar film I decided I was going to let slip by. I wasn't going to watch it. And then, a couple of years ago, I was at home for Christmas. And I was sitting around with my family at Christmas, as you do, watching some movies, and The Good Dinosaur came on TV. And I found myself engrossed in a phenomenal story. And that's the thing, my expectations were so low going into this movie, maybe that helped shift it, in my opinion, but I instantly fell in love with this movie. It's got a lot of heart, it's got a good story. Of course the animation is great, it's a Pixar movie. It was one of those movies I was shocked to find how much I actually liked it. So for me personally, A Good Dinosaur is a great movie. Moving swiftly on, we've got Coco. Now Coco is exceptional. If you haven't seen Coco, I'd highly recommend it. And I can see already that it looks like I'm just going to put everything in the top 2 tiers. I'm going to try not to do that too much, but Coco definitely is either great or greatest. It's definitely one of the best movies I've watched in the last 3 years. It's a very well told story, very unique, and it's got some good music in there, some good characters in there. Is it iconic? Is it one of the greatest Pixar movies? For now, I'm going to put it in great. I'm going to review it again later. But as I said with Inside Out, it's the most borderline of borderline, touching onto that greatness. Maybe I need another category in between the two, and it would definitely be in that one. It's a tough call. Let me know what you think. Coco, great or greatest? Which one should it be? For now, I'm going to put it in great. And then we've got Onward. Now, when I reviewed Soul, I said that Disney, in the last few years, the films are just getting better and better and better, and that's definitely the case with Coco, and then Onward, and then Soul. If Soul was on this list, it would be in greatest. Onward was another phenomenal story. Some great chemistry between the characters. You got Tom Holland and Chris Pratt in there, 2 Avengers. A very well told story, definitely unique yet again. They're getting pretty good at doing that, Pixar. And a movie that can kind of pull at your heartstrings. Onward, again, it's a battle between the two. I think, for me personally, Coco is slightly better, so if Coco's going into great, Onward also has to go into great. And moving swiftly on, because this is when things start to go downhill, because now we're looking at A Bug's Life. Now, A Bug's Life, when I was a kid, as a movie I never really liked. I never got into it, I didn't have any hype for it, and I don't think it stood the test of time that well. The animation's not as good as some of the other Pixar films, the lead character is forgettable, I don't even know the lead character's name in this one, and I think it's definitely one of the weaker Pixar movies. However, to say it's trash might be a little bit harsh. It's okay. Of course, they had Ants come out at the same time from DreamWorks, and it's more or less the same story, same type of thing. But for me, I think it's okay at best. So, you know, not everything's going in the top 2 tiers if you're thinking that. Then we move on to Toy Story 2, and I know this is going to be a controversial one, but I was never a big fan of Toy Story 2. Despite loving Toy Story, maybe I just expected too much from Toy Story 2. The story's fine, a bit cheesy at times, but of course it's a kids movie. I just don't think it held up as well as the original one in terms of story. Of course it introduced some new characters and everything, that was cool, but for me, I was never that hyped about it. I didn't think it was as great as the others. I don't think it's as good as the movies that are in the great list, and therefore I'm going to put it in good. Now that might be controversial, I know a lot of people love that movie, but for me, it just wasn't spectacular. So moving swiftly on, we got Monsters Inc. And Monsters Inc. is a fantastic movie, certainly another unique movie. Now I heard a thing about the animation before where Sully, the hair on his body, it took months to render because each individual hair on his body had to be rendered. Now I don't know how true that is, but clearly a ridiculous amount of work went into this movie. Some good storytelling, some good acting, and you got Mike Wazowski in there. So this movie is going in great. Moving swiftly on, we got Up. Now Up is a special movie. The first 10-15 minutes of Up, the part with Carl and Ellie and you see their story, is one of the best pieces of cinema of all time in my opinion. That one part makes this movie iconic. What came after it, the part with Carl and the kid and the flying house, that was all fine. That would probably alone put it in good. But the Carl and Ellie stuff would put it in greatest. That was sensational. I think it's only right to put it in great. It is a fantastic movie. The story's okay. The Carl and Ellie stuff, as I said, that's what makes it truly great. And if you haven't watched Up, just watch the 15 minutes and you'll be blown away. Moving swiftly on, we got Finding Nemo. A movie which at the time when it came out seemed to captivate the world. Everyone was talking about it. And it kind of became one of the most iconic Disney films. Certainly one of the most iconic Disney characters. And I think when people think of Pixar movies, Finding Nemo is one of the first ones they think of. And I don't think you can go anywhere other than great. And it seems like I'm just going to put everything in great right now. But we'll see, we can always rejig it later on and figure out where things go. Moving swiftly on, yet again, we're now moving on to The Incredibles. And for me, I never really got it. I like The Incredibles, it's fine, it's not amazing. The story was good, maybe I just expected a little bit too much from The Incredibles the first time I watched it, and the second time. The movie never grabbed me like the other Pixar movies have. And for that reason, I don't think it can go in great with the other movies. I don't think it's bad, I don't think it's even in okay. It's good, it's not amazing, it's going in good. Then we move on to Cars, and I'm sure a lot of people would expect it to go right down here in trash, but I'm going to put it in okay. It's certainly one of the weaker Pixar films, but at the same time, perhaps the best of the Cars movies. Next up, we got Ratatouille, and Ratatouille, fantastic movie. Ratatouille is a very good movie. The animation's good. The story's a little bit slow, and I really like Ratatouille. And I want to put it up here in great, but at the same time I'm trying to be strict and not just put everything in great. And I gotta say, by comparison to the others, the story's a bit slower, and although it's borderline great, I'm gonna be very harsh here and put it in good. And that might be controversial, we'll wait and see. If you think that's controversial, let me know in the comments below. Maybe you think something else like the Good Dinosaur or Monsters Inc. should be down there. I'm starting to think that myself, maybe I'll rejig the list. But for now, Ratatouille is going in good. We'll review it all at the end. Moving swiftly on, yet again, now we find ourselves with WALLE. And WALLE, just no debating this, it's going in greatest. For me, one of the best Pixar movies. Maybe it's because of the sci-fi element to it, where he's like in space and all that, and he's a little robot in the future. This movie, it's got a ridiculous amount of heart in it. It's got a great storyline. It's even got warnings for the future, because in a world where for the last year or so, we've all had to isolate and not go to social events and not do things. We basically all just sit around in chairs watching movies. We're now edging ever closer to the floaty chairs. So maybe WALLE could see into the future. A warning. But it also created a very iconic character who I think will stand the test of time. I just hope that Disney someday don't try to ruin WALLE by making WALLE 2, which would be completely unnecessary. It's a movie that should stand alone, and that character will stand the test of time as one of the best creations Disney Pixar have ever made. Phenomenal movie. We're going from a phenomenal movie to Cars 2. I don't think it needs any explanation why Cars 2 is going in trash. Terrible movie, doesn't need explanation, so moving on to Toy Story 3. Now, Toy Story 2 went in good, Toy Story went in greatest. Toy Story 3 for me, phenomenal movie. For one scene and one scene alone. And any Toy Story fan out there, I'm sure, knows the scene I'm talking about before I even mentioned it. It's a trash compactor scene. The scene where all the toys link arms and are heading towards their doom. And the camera slowly pans in, they hold on the shot for a long time, and they just build up the emotion really well. In that part, these characters we've had for over 10 years at this point, characters that a lot of us have grown up with, going to this terrible ending. And it seems in the movie that they're actually just going to do it. They're going to just have that be the end. It's a scene that can make a grown man cry. A scene that can pull out ridiculous emotion out of people. And I think any movie that can evoke emotion like that, for me personally anyway, any movie that can evoke emotion like that is a great movie. The stuff with Luxo and everything is kind of weak, and that kind of pushes it down a little bit, but that one scene alone with the trash compactor, that makes it a great movie for me. And I think Toy Story 3 deservedly goes in great. Moving on, yet again, we're on to Monsters University. I don't think it'll be any surprise to find it goes in trash. Complete money grab based on the first one, kind of crappy story, just not good. Monsters Inc., it's in great, it might be borderline good. In fact, Monsters U was so bad, I'm even going to pull Monsters Inc. down to good. That's just how bad Monsters U was. Moving on, we got Finding Dory. Now, Finding Nemo is in great. Finding Dory, for me, bit of a letdown. The story was fine, but the big thing with this movie is it seems to be another cash grab. Finding Nemo had become iconic, it's made them a lot of money down the years, and it's just another thing from Disney where they're like, hey, you remember this character? Buy all the toys from this character. It's fine, it's a good-ish movie, but for me, it's going into okay. I don't think it's bad, I don't think it's great. I think it was a bit of a letdown overall. Moving on to Cars 3. Cars 3 goes in trash. Next, The Incredibles 2, and I already put Incredibles in good. Incredibles 2, again, a build up to a letdown, and I never really had much love for the first film. I put it in good, and I think I was being generous with that. It's not a bad movie, it's not a great movie, you know, it's got its moments, but it doesn't have anything incredible, ironically, you know. So for me, I'm going to put Incredibles 2 in, decision, good or okay, good or okay. I'll put it in good, and I think I'm being generous with that. And finally, we've got Toy Story 4. Toy Story 4, for me, only has one place, and that's trash. Toy Story 3 was a great ending to the Toy Story series. The toys were handed off to someone new, they were going to get a new life. And then sure, they made a lot of shorts and all that with the Toy Story characters, and you see them living their lives afterwards. But Toy Story 4 was a ridiculous, terrible, unnecessary cash grab. The story is bad, it's completely unnecessary, and just ruins the ending of Toy Story 3. And it's just a shame they just wanted to go back in one more time for one more cash grab. Completely unnecessary. And that's all I'm going to say about that one. But that's why it goes in trash. So taking a quick review of the entire list from top to bottom, in the greatest folder we've got Toy Story and WALL-E. Now I could have put other movies in there, I was considering putting Inside Out in there and Coco and Onwards, but I wanted to be strict and just put the best of the best in there. For me, Toy Story and WALL-E are the best of the best. Moving down to great, and it was very hard not to just put a load of movies in this. So we've got Brave, we've got Inside Out, we've got The Good Dinosaur, Coco, Onwards, Up, Finding Nemo, and Toy Story 3. And both of the top two tiers, if you haven't seen any of those movies, I'd highly recommend looking at all of them. Moving down the list to the good folder, we've got Toy Story 2, which as I said, just wasn't for me, I guess. Then you've got The Incredibles, which ironically was just good. Then you've got Ratatouille, which was borderline great. I tried to be, you know, a bit critical and not put too many things in great, but that's pushing toward great. Just the story's a bit slow. Monsters Inc. was in great. I moved it down just because of how bad Monsters U was. And Incredibles 2, I think it's as good as The Incredibles, perhaps slightly better, but both Incredibles and Incredibles 2 were borderline okay. But I was being generous and put them in good. Then we moved down to the okay folder. A Bug's Life, a movie I never really liked. Anyway, I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's good, and that's why it's an okay. Cars, a movie generally considered one of the weaker Pixar movies, Finding Dory, complete cash grab from Disney, and then we moved on to trash where we got Cars 2, Monsters University, Cars 3 and Toy Story 4, all completely unnecessary from Disney, all terrible movies, and I wouldn't recommend watching any of them. So there we go guys, Movie Film's first ever tier list, Disney and Pixar tier list. As I said at the start of the video, there will be a link to this tier list so you can try it out for yourself. Maybe even send your tier list to me on Twitter. You can find our Twitter on our YouTube channel page, should be a button in the top right corner, and you can also find it in the description. Send me your list and let me know what you think I got wrong. And of course, let me know in the comments what you thought of the tier list, which should be higher, which should be lower. So ladies and gentlemen, if you like today's video, please hit the like button just so I know that you're watching. And of course, if you're new, hit the subscribe button for new content every Wednesday and Friday. And with all that out of the way, thank you so much for watching.